So hey, here we are with pre-writing 2. So now you have, you know, described your object, and now it's time to really think about like a story or some narrative you can tell about kind of interacting with it or why it's so significant, whoever it represents, that kind of thing. Because if you just describe, then this is going to be maybe one paragraph, 2 paragraphs long. We're aiming for 3 pages. So, and I'm not crazy like the very end of the 3rd page, all the way down to the bottom. But you need to hit that 3rd page well, okay? Not the top of the page 3. Get toward the bottom, okay? So one of the ways we can do that is if we put that description in the narrative. So now you've thought of all those details. Now it's time to think about a story. And while you're telling that story, get some of that description in. You may use everything from your list. You may not, okay? You may add new things. So don't worry about that. That doing the details list, the pre-writing one, is really to get you thinking about your object itself, noticing the details, really investing in it, okay? And you may, after I go through this, you may decide, you know what, I want to change my object. If you want to, that's fine. You don't even have to go back and redo pre-writing 1, though I suggest you at least do for yourself. Part of learning to write well is learning that sometimes we go through ideas and we say, yeah, that's the one, and then we decide, no, I want something else, okay? So you need to think about the sample essays we've looked at. Look at other sample essays. Remember that, the essay page on kelli.ninja, go to 1301, Emblematic Object. There are a bunch of samples, right? So look at how they did it, okay? So anyway, that's where that's at. And if you do feel like you want to change, like I said, I really believe you should go back and do that pre-writing one, that list just for yourself, to help you write and help you think more descriptively in that way. But you don't have to turn a new one into me. As long as you turned it in, you're good to go, okay? All right, so let me tell you a little bit about how to write a good story, because when we look at these samples, I think you'll see that like there are amazing stories in here. And I kid you not when I tell you these samples are from students who, some of them like to write and they came into class already good writers, and some of them don't, and some of them didn't start feeling like they were good writers. It's just step by step. So let me give you some tips for how to write a good story. The first thing you have to do to get your point across is throw away the idea of essay as this dirty, formal, stifled style of writing. Instead, you put on your story writing garb and work to create a story as close to the moment as possible. Create immediacy by writing from a personal perspective, and show, don't tell. Use dialogue, automatopoeia, and deep description. Put your reader in the moment. So, first of all, just stop thinking about it's an essay for English class. It is what it is. And again, just like with the first pre-writing, if you write this, you're thoughtful about it, you're on topic, it's not just like a lame, like one sentence, right? Try. If you don't like it, what's the worst that could happen? You could say, I don't like that. Let me write some different stuff, right? You may write it down and say, hey, I like it, or I like this part. That's cool, right? That's the only way we can figure out whether our writing is good, bad, needs to be changed, added to, thrown away, whatever, right? And I've done all of those things. Is we have to write it down, and then we can make judgments about it. So same thing, you write this down, you do it, you get a 100. Do it, turn it thoughtfully, turn it in on time, you get a 100, because that's an important part of the process. Doing this kind of thing where you write and don't worry about grammar, worry about anything else, that's important. So here, when you write that story, just like you did with that object, where you close your eyes and you say, let me picture this object. Close your eyes and be in that moment. What was it like? Feel yourself there, right? And if you're talking about that object, when you do feel it in your hands, see it there, describe it there, the other people, what did they look like? What did they sound like? What was going on? All of those things. So again, this is details. Do that. Now, how do you do it? You do it step by step. I walked into the room and my mom had just picked up something to drink. she said. That's a good narrative. You don't know my mom, but you could picture some momish person, picking up something to drink, even if I hadn't have displayed it to you. But I'm saying it's that simple. If somebody reaches and picks up a glass, right, they've reached out and picked up a glass. And have people do some things. That gives you more words, okay? Because one of the things we're working on is how do you make papers long enough. I struggled with that too. And so, be very specific. She looked down at her phone. Those are easy things to write that sometimes we think we forget about. And those are the things that make the story. I looked up and said, "What are you thinking?" Right? She looked back at me and said, "Here, have this thing." That's storytelling. When you use somebody's exact words, "Here, have this thing," she said, right? Put them in the quote marks. Right? That shows, those quote marks show that's somebody's exact words. Don't put them in italics. No. Okay? Quote marks. Quotation marks. Okay? So that's really how you do it. The automatopoeia is one of my favorite words because it's just crazy. It means if you have the sound of it, instead of say the dog was barking, you can say, "Roof, roof, roof," said the dog. "Ruff, ruff, ruff." Right? "Bow, wow, wow," said the dog. Whatever, right? Think of kids' books, right? They do that because it gives us that sense of being there, that kind of thing. If you can describe, the place you're in, don't do every little single detail, but overall, right? If it's Christmas, then we should kind of have that sense of Christmassy things around if you're in a place where they decorated for Christmas. If it's not Christmas, and there are no Christmassy things, well, then again, we know that's a good thing to describe because that's unique, right? So that's really how you approach narrative and make it feel very clear. So if I'm going to really show you the significance of the book Amy gave me, my friend Amy, I might do something like this, which describes the book in the context of the story. So here's my try at telling a story. Outside the English building at New Mexico State University, there's a concrete bench where my friends and I often gather to talk. It wasn't unusual that Amy showed up on that day. In fact, it would have been more unusual if she hadn't. It was unusual, however, that she extended her hand to me and said, "Here." Grasped in her fingers was a plastic grocery bag wrapped haphazardly around something. "It's your Christmas present," she smiled. "Early." I reached through the crinkled bag, smiling at the knowledge that Amy was never good at wrapping presents. At first touch, the woven texture of cloth covering revealed the bag's contents. Before I had pulled the book out, I seemed to smell the dustiness that comes with sitting on a shelf for so long. The binding on the left was an all too bright orange, a remnant of 1929, edged by small wisps of thread loosened over time. The front and back covers were a slate blue. I opened the cover and read Elmer Gantry. I lifted the book to my nose, my right hand still between the cover and the title page. There was the chalkiness of dust, the potent age of mold. "I saw it, and I had to get it for you. I knew you had to have it." Amy was beaming. This book now stands among others dusty with age, bearing the scars of wear, abuse, and love. From the frayed cloth binding, the outer corner's bland, static cardboard peeks out. Between the R and the Y of gantry, the remnant of a price tag or sticker speaks of the book's past lives. I imagine Amy, who inscribed the book to Kelly from Boston's Brattle bookstore, Amy, standing in between shelves piled high, noticing these details as I would do when buying a book for her. We, in our different times, see the pages faded to manila, darker around the edges framing the text. We flip through them looking for evidence of previous owners, something more to share with the past. We feel the coarse texture of the paper, a texture so unlike a new book's slick pages. At the end of the novel are listings of the publisher's other new releases. The novels of Grace Livingston Hill tops a column of titles never read in our English classes. Inside the back, between the cover and the spine, The netting that provides support and creates durability steals out like a lace undergarment. Okay, so can you see how it not only tells you about the book, but also shows you how it's an emblem of the friendship and similar interests that Amy and I share? I obviously love the book, and she knew I would, but I worked to describe not just the book itself, but also the feelings, attitudes, and emotions that go with it. So I'm integrating all that kind of description stuff, maybe not every single word, don't worry about that, into my story. And I think you'll see, I think mine's okay, but I think when you look at the student samples, you'll see that my students are doing better than I have every year I teach it. And that's what every teacher wants. I probably wrote this sample, I can't even remember. I'd have to look at the sample essay and see what the date is on it. But more than 10 years ago, at least, and way more. More like probably 20, yeah, maybe, okay. And yeah, now I totally look at it and it makes me go, I'm like, oh, I still want to change it. But I like leaving it there because it's a reminder to me how much I've changed. It is one example of a way to do it. It's not the only. That may be a little English teachery. Well, guess what? I'm an English teacher. That's how I write. Go look at the other samples, because then you'll see how people who are not English teachers write too, and do it well. Okay? But you can see I told the story, and then I also kind of got that description in there. And that's what we're working toward. In Rubens, which, if we haven't read it so far, Papi Güero, that one, he definitely tells that story, and then he takes the description and really kind of looks at how this object is, reflects Papi Güero, so his grandfather. So you can approach it a lot of different ways, and it's up to you. It's a creative endeavor. So I can't necessarily tell you you're wrong. I can tell you how to do it better. Make sure you're following the rules for what object you can pick, right? So that's really the key, is just let go and step by step. For example, here I reached through the crinkled bag, smiling at the knowledge that Amy was never good at wrapping presents. This right here, that's that thing I told you. I reached into the bag, right? Now, Amy would like me to tell you right now, she wraps presents very nicely. Okay? So that was a public service announcement from Amy. Okay? So that is pretty much your narrative and description. So just remember, tell it step by step. That's it. Use the details of what happened, your point of view. Use I, me, my. I did this. That puts your reader in your shoes. That's very important. Not just what you saw. What did you hear, smell, feel, touch, right? If someone's saying something, give it in dialogue. Not, Mom told me to come here. Instead, come here, called my mom over the din of TV and the chaos of voices. And then integrate the descriptions you developed in your first pre-writing. Show yourself looking at the object, holding it, or somebody else with it. Whatever it is, however, everybody chooses a different object, and so it's different for everybody. But overall, here's your pre-writing assignment. To make sure that it's time to describe it, set your description in the context of a narrative. So in your pre-writing 2, write the story or a couple of stories of a time you remember the object. As you tell the story or stories, describe the object. You should have 2 to 3 paragraphs. And if you end up with more, if you have words like coming out of your head, write them down, because that means the clouds have parted, the light has shone down on you, and you have inspiration going on. So you can definitely do more. Get at least 2 or 3. If you're coming up short, just say, can I tell another story? Or what else happened? What did I hear, see? Who said something? What was the day like? Was it cold or cloudy? Whatever you can think of. In the end, you're going to decide what to keep from this and what to change for your final essay. But right now, if you can just get like as many ideas as you can on the page, it gives you a lot more to choose from. Okay? So that's where we're at with that. And I think, oh yeah, there's nothing there. So this must be the end, my friend, of this video about pre-writing 2. So give it a try, trust yourself, and let me know if you have questions, and keep on keeping on.